Good morning. This is Don Smith, pastor of Southside Baptist Church here in Newport, Tennessee. And it's Monday morning, November the 9th, and wanted to spend a few minutes with you and share some thoughts after the weekend. Yesterday at Southside, we talked about the 10th chapter of the book of Matthew, and this is Jesus's final instruction, sort of his marching orders for the disciples before as he is sending them out into the world. And there are several points that we made in the sermon that I just want to mention once again. First, Jesus is encouraging them by giving them special abilities to use the power that Jesus has to, he is sharing or bestowing his power on the disciples to do certain things. And at this point, the disciples are fairly new to Jesus and what he's doing. They have seen him perform miracles. They've seen him raise the dead. For example, they've seen him cure leprosy, which was probably the most feared disease of that time. They've seen the power that he has in a variety of different ways, and they understand what this power means. And I would imagine that, as I said in the sermon yesterday, that was hearing those words must have been very exciting for the disciples. Imagine having seen someone with that power, and they say, now you're going to be able to do the same thing. And I imagine they were running through a list in their heads at that point about all the family members that they knew who were sick, or even maybe thinking about the possibility of raising loved ones from the dead. So I think this is really a wonderful place to begin to think about what Jesus is telling them. Those first words of excitement and encouragement and neat things are about to happen, and I'm sure they were very excited. And then the second thing, he explains to them that they are going to be doing something that is very risky, even life-threatening for them, and that although there is reason to rejoice in this mission, he wants them to understand the reality of it. And I think that sometimes our Christian lives, we forget that we live in a dangerous world, a world that is in which there are spiritual forces that are very hostile to Christianity and who hate the name of Jesus Christ, and certainly become incensed if you suggest that Jesus is, as he said, the only way, the only pathway that leads to the real God. So I think we need to understand that if we attempt to be faithful disciples of Jesus Christ, if we really want to live out our Christianity, we can expect to live with a certain amount of hostility in the world toward us. And that hostility, as we have seen in the last, certainly in the last couple of decades, can be deadly for Christians. There is Christian persecution of Christians, killing of Christians going on around the world today. And we see in our own, the responses of our own governments, even in the United States in the last 10 years, the last 20 years, that there is something of a change in attitude. It's become politically incorrect to acknowledge that you love the Lord, that you actually believe what the Bible says. So we live in a time that's not unlike the time in which Jesus was giving instructions to his disciples. The third major point from this 10th chapter of Matthew, I think, is that in addition to the world being a dangerous place, that we can expect conflict. And it's interesting, when Jesus is talking, or this very, very strange passage in which he says, he said, I'm not come to bring peace. I'm come to bring a sword to divide. And we know that in the eschatology, the end times prophecies of the New Testament, that division is certainly going to be the feature. It's not going to be a united one world. It's going to be a world that's divided between the forces of Jesus Christ and pretty much everybody else. And it's going to be a time in which we will understand that Jesus separates and divides the righteous from the unrighteous. It's said that in the Soviet Union, I read in one place that they estimate that a third of the families, family members were willing to turn other family members into the KGB because they were not enthusiastic enough about the communist revolution. We hear some politicians threatening these days that if they win the election, that they intend to make life hard for citizens who supported the other side. So we can understand that politics can divide families. It certainly has in the last few years and continues to do so. But when Jesus said that I've come to bring a sword and I will turn, people will turn against their own family members. And then he goes on to make that very strange statement, unless you hate this person in your family or that relationship, then you're not worthy to be my disciple. And what that means is that our love for Christ should be greater, so much greater, than the love that even we have for the most precious of our family members. And I love my wife and my children, would die for them readily, and love so many of my friends and so forth, and yet Jesus Christ must be more important to us than even those most precious relationships. And that, to me, is a real challenge and not easy. And so I think in the sermon, toward the end of the sermon yesterday, I said, really, I struggle with this too. Is Jesus really the most important relationship in my life? And I have to admit that sometimes that's not true. And I confess that, and I ask for the grace of God in my life to grow that love for Christ. I think that's what it means when when Jesus says, knock and the door will be open, seek and you will find, ask and your question will be answered, is if we genuinely ask the Lord, Lord, I want to be a disciple that's worthy of being your disciple. And Jesus says, unless we are willing to proclaim him, willing to stand up for him in public, willing to acknowledge him, that he will not acknowledge us before the Father. So it's a serious consequence if we fail on that point. And all we can do as mere human beings and coming from backgrounds that are steeped in sort of that original rebellious nature is we can pray and ask the Lord to grant us that kind of love for him. And that kind of love really comes out of just seeing who Jesus is. I think once we have that vision of who our Lord is and what he has done for us in our lives, that commandment to love him above everything else gets easier and easier. The fourth point, and again it's similar to this one, coming out of that idea that we are going to be in conflict because other things will want to be more important to us than our relationship with the Lord. And the fourth point is that if Jesus is not first in our lives, then he will be nothing in our lives. And it's important, I think, in this time of political division, we have our political views, and I think that's important. I think Christians should be involved in politics and should vote. We should be looking at the issues and how they impact the advancement of the Christian faith. And I think that it's important to do that, but at the same time, we must not surrender our integrity in order to support a an ungodly ruler, and at the same time, Jesus must stand first because we have incomplete information. We do the best we can to make decisions and to vote according to what we feel is consistent with our Christian faith. We may disagree about that. But one thing we should not disagree about is when there is a conflict between what Christ commands us to do and what the government commands us to do, there should be no question that we will follow and render unto God the things that are God's and unto Caesar the things that belong to Caesar. Our lives belong to Jesus Christ. Our lives do not belong to the government. And we are not the slaves of any government. We are the servants and slaves of Jesus Christ if we are Christians. So those are just some of the points that I made yesterday in the sermon. I think it's good to go back and refresh our thinking about that because there's no more important point, nothing really more important for each of us to be doing than to be clarifying what is the importance of Jesus Christ in my life. Is Jesus important, and is my faith in Him determining and governing what direction my life will take? I think one of the early points, I haven't mentioned this one, but I think it's an important one. Yesterday I talked about how churches, I think, have spent a lot of time and a lot of money on programs that are said to help us identify our gifts and our talents. Jesus did not spend a lot of time with the disciples. In fact, He chose people that appeared to be pretty talentless for the most part. If you were going to pick a team of folks to go out and share something as beautiful and complex and as marvelous as the gospel of grace, these guys were kind of like us. They're not maybe the ideal candidates. They don't come from great educations for the most part, and they're laborers and workers, and that is such an important thing for us to stand by, is that Christianity is not an elitist religion. It is a religion of the common people, the working people of the world. It appeals to the people who are honestly out there living, trying to make sense of life, doing the best they can. And the thing about the disciples is that Jesus didn't send them off they hung around with Him, heard what He had to say. They'd seen His miracles and so forth. And then He's ready to send them out pretty quickly. And He tells them not to worry about anything. Don't take anything with you. Don't buy extra clothes for the journey. All that's going to be taken care of. You don't need, and He says, you don't need to acquire some gold and silver and copper. And the reason He mentions all three of those metals, gold being the most precious, the coins that were worth the most were gold, and the ones that were worth a little less were silver, and the ones that were, like our pennies today. I know people who will not bother to, if a penny falls on the floor, they won't bother to lean down and pick it up. So He's saying not even a penny, not even a copper coin do you need to be worried about. So the point there is really, really important. And I think a lot of you are considering what you want to be doing for the Lord. You're considering your calling, your mission, your talents, the way that God has gifted you to serve Him. Do not think in terms of your lack of an ability. If God is calling, He will equip you to do whatever He wants you to do. And I think it's also important to note that almost the first thing Jesus says is don't go out of your local region. You're going to stay right here, and you're going to do the work of spreading the gospel among the lost sheep of Israel. That is the Jews. That was where He wanted their initial focus. Eventually, they would travel over the known world. Thomas would go to India. Paul would go to Spain. They would go and spread the gospel to the Samaritans. That was the sort of next locality, and to the Gentiles, who were everybody other than the Jews. So that was going to happen. But when they started, he said, go close to home and spread my gospel. And that's a good message for us when we're young people who are starting to serve the Lord. You know, we did mission work in a variety of different places, took teams to different foreign mission fields, and that's a wonderful experience. It really is. It can be a great boost to your faith and a great deepening of your understanding what it means to take a risk for your life, with your life, to go and share the gospel. And that's all valuable. But at the same time, we need to start where we live. We need to start in our own families, perhaps. We need to start in our neighborhoods. Go and see those people, those neighbors that you haven't met, invite them to church. If the opportunity arises, we need to be speaking in the workplace too about our faith in Jesus Christ. You know, the Lord will open up, if you're willing to share your testimony, for example, or just to share that you are a Christian and you go to church, that you observe Sundays, or that you have really enjoyed your church fellowship in some way. If you have an opportunity, and the Lord will make opportunities, it's just a question of whether we will follow through, whether He'll open the doors. We need to walk through those doors. But don't think you need talent. Don't think you need special gifts. If the Lord calls you to do something, He's going to equip you right then and there. And He's going to give you the words to say. So don't even worry about your speech. Just go where He invites you to go. So the thing about the sort of summary point I want to make is, you know, when Jesus talks about that we have to love Him so much more than we love any other people in our lives, that's kind of a disturbing thought. And we can feel that, I'm not going to hate my spouse or my children or my parents or whatever. What is Jesus talking about? And most commentators on this suggest that the idea here is that it's not love versus hatred. It's love versus it's a valuation. We value our families, obviously, but we value Jesus Christ so much more that, in contrast, the love that we feel for Jesus and the love that we feel for even our most precious family members seems almost like a contrast between love and hate. It's not hatred. We love them. And the interesting paradox, and this was my closing point yesterday, is that when we do this, when we love Jesus like we should, we will find that we love our spouses and our children and our parents more than we ever have. In fact, we may discover that for the first time in our lives, when we put Jesus at the center of our lives, that the love for everyone, all the lost people in the world, our families, all of our special friends, all of that, the love for them just grows and grows. When I was called to be a pastor late in my life, I said one of the things that really, really surprised me is how much I came to love my church family at Southside Baptist Church. I was surprised by it. I knew I liked them. I had met most of them and had really enjoyed them as we were going through that process. They were kind of looking me over and deciding whether or not they wanted to spend a few years with me in the pulpit. But I tell you what, it surprised me that something changed in my heart when they called me as their interim pastor, and that love has not diminished. In fact, it has grown and grown and grown. And that's the way it is with the love of Jesus. When you surrender to serve Him, the love in your heart starts to develop and grow in ways that are quite astounding, really surprising. Those places in your lives where there's hurt and you felt that somehow was unresolved. And those places in your life, and we all have them, is that when we put Jesus really at the core of our life, make Him the one that determines how we think and how we act, and we develop that hunger to know Him better and just to be with Him. When that happens, it's really, really wonderful that the love begins to heal those places in our lives, and we find whether or not others forgive us for the wrongs, that we certainly are able to forgive the wrongs that people have done to us. So that's kind of a summary of where we went yesterday at Southside, and just wanted to do this. I'm going to try to do this every Sunday, as maybe come back and summarize that. You can see the service at Southside on Facebook. We were Facebook Live yesterday, so we didn't do a live video recording yesterday, but go to Facebook, look for Southside Baptist Church, Newport, Tennessee, and you can watch the entire service. We're scaled back, of course. We're there conducting services, and we have people come. We have plenty of room to spread out and so forth. If you're uncomfortable, we try to accommodate and account for that. Just want to say a word of love and appreciation, and for our folks who are sick, who are in hospice care, who are recovering from surgeries, who are suffering from illnesses right now. I want you to know that we are praying for you, that we love you, miss you at church, and I'll be back midweek with another short message for you from Southside Baptist Church, and I hope that on this Monday the Lord is the center of your life, and throughout this week all the news that you hear, you'll filter it through your love for Jesus Christ and think in terms of, what would Jesus do here? Where's the truth? Where's the integrity? Where is the qualities and characteristics that Jesus Christ expects from His disciples? Thanks for watching today. May God bless you. You can write to us at Southside Baptist Church, Box 668, here in Newport, Tennessee. That's one word, Newport, Tennessee, 37822. 37822. I'm Don Smith, pastor at Southside, and thank you for watching. God bless you.